I called a family meeting to break the news that I'm sick and might not have much time left. My brother Jake and his wife Lisa thought it would be a good time to announce their pregnancy and are now pissed. A bit of backstory. Jake and I are very close. Lisa and I not so much. We've had our fair share of tension. Anyway, I fell sick in the middle of May but held off getting checked out because of COVID and safety reasons. Eventually, when June started, I decided to go check it out. Turns out it was stage 2 breast cancer. I decided to tell my family 2 days ago since lockdown laws had been lifted, so I invited everyone over. When I told Jake and Lisa, he said, "Okay, that's fine because he has news to share too." So our family gathered, and Jake decided to go first. He did ask me, and he announced that Lisa is 4 months pregnant. Of course, everyone was overjoyed. After about an hour, they asked about my news, and I knew this was probably the last time in a long while that I would have everyone here in person. So I told them, and of course the initial joyous atmosphere was gone. The rest of the evening was a lot of support for me and not a lot of attention on Jake and Lisa. Jake didn't seem to mind this as he was quite distraught with my news, but I saw Lisa was pretty upset and cornered off. So I decided to approach her and apologized for the timing of it all. She told me I could have waited a bit and Skyped everyone with the news since it's just stage 2 and let Jake and her have this moment with their family. I told her I initially called this meeting for this exact reason, and she said she knows, but I knew my news would dampen everyone's mood. So I told her she was being ridiculous, and I wanted to tell my family in person since they are my family after all. She burst into tears and demanded to go home, which Jake obliged to even though he was confused. He promised he would come to see me soon since he stays close by. Later that evening I got a message from Jake asking if I told Lisa that she isn't part of the family, and that I deliberately wanted the attention on me because that's what she's upset about. Also, the next day my parents called me to check up on me, and my mom mentioned that Lisa called yesterday evening really upset, telling them what I said, and claiming I'm jealous because she's pregnant and I'm trying to ruin her life. I told my parents what actually happened and what I really said, and it's caused not only tension between Lisa and me, but between my parents and her too. Now she's also blaming me for my parents not being her biggest fans. Jake is torn but has been trying to talk to her, which results in more tears and a strain in their marriage. All this drama is making me think that I should have just called up everyone rather than told Jake that his news had to wait. Even though that would have been selfish of me, I really wanted my family's support that day. But I'm starting to rethink whether it was worth all this drama and potentially causing further problems. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this to get so much lovely feedback and to think I was slightly scared to post this. Thank you all for the unwavering support, love, and hugs. I read and am still reading every single comment made, and I really, really appreciate it. I will most definitely fight through. Thank you all so much. Just wanted to add a few points. When Jake told me he had news too, he was really super excited and added it as a, "Just by the way, I'll announce mine too." He did apologize and admit afterwards that if he had known what my news was, he would have held off his because right now what's important is my recovery. He also admitted he wrongfully assumed that my news would automatically be good. I'm usually always the happy, chirpy one. Lisa wasn't too fond of this either. Lisa also had a miscarriage at the beginning of the year, which is why this pregnancy, I suppose, was extra special. I'm truly happy for them. I just wish she could understand, like one user pointed out, that this isn't a competition. I don't know why I couldn't tell him over the phone. We are really close, and I knew it would have crushed him. I couldn't steal him away at the gathering either because he was the last to arrive, and when he did, he just quickly mentioned, "Hey, mind if I go first?" And I was frozen on the spot, so I said sure. Also pretty silly on my part. It's hard to explain that feeling where you're absolutely frozen and there's a big lump in your throat that prevents you from speaking. But saying that news in the first place was really difficult to begin with. Edit. Just another point to clarify, I'm not a saint, but Jake does mean a heck of a lot to me. It's exactly why Lisa and I cleared the air between us before, because I wouldn't deliberately make his life hell by pissing her off. Hence, when I saw she was upset, I approached her, and when she told me I could have Skyped, I responded with, I wanted to tell them in person since they're my family, and they would probably want to be there with me when I broke the news. I never once implied she wasn't a part of it. Jake and my parents know this. Update. Sorry this is so late. A lot has been happening the past month since the news came out, and since I've received a tremendous amount of love from Reddit, I thought it would be only fair to let you all know what happened. First and foremost, I've started treatment. Also one of the reasons I couldn't update sooner. Thank you all for your well wishes. I plan on bouncing back as soon as I can. Anyway, I could see that Jake was under a lot of stress, and I finally sat him down to talk about it properly. He showed me a bunch of texts that Lisa sent him, telling him he is a shitty father for choosing me over his family. She said I was seeking attention and nobody cares about her. One thing that really got to me was that she told him to choose once and for all, and if he picks me, he loses her and his child, and if he picks her, she doesn't want me in their lives at all. I felt terrible, not only for him, but knowing that I could have prevented all this. I took the time to apologize for putting him in this position, and if I had just pulled him aside soon enough and given him a heads up, he would have truly understood. Jake tells me I shouldn't apologize because he should have been more considerate. He also mentioned that Lisa would have probably still gotten mad at him whether they did or didn't give the news on that day. So I decided I should invite her over for coffee to sort out everything. I spoke to her alone. I asked her about everything. She was very cold and didn't really answer. So I started talking first by apologizing if I made her feel excluded from the family or that her pregnancy was of any less importance. I explained that I should have given them a heads up so we could have avoided what had happened altogether, and that it was my fault and that I was very sorry. But I also mentioned that the way she reacted and went to the extent of lying wasn't okay. She then started crying and vented about how angry she's been and that Jake always puts me first. Recently, they've been going through a rough patch, and when he sided with me, it made her even more upset and feel even more lonely. She admitted she lied to my parents and Jake, saying that she was hoping they would show her more sympathy, and when they were cold to her, she got even more upset. After hours of talking, she apologized for how she acted and has been acting, and she would like if we moved on from this. Jake came later, and they both went home. He texted me, saying they both spoke for hours and agreed to couples therapy. My parents are currently living with me and helping me out tremendously, but they are not quite happy with Lisa yet, although they promised to try to work things out. Things finally seem to calm down, and let's hope it stays that way. None of this would have been possible without the feedback you all gave me, and I am indebted to that. So thank you. Edit to add. All of you are so kind, honestly, but I wanted to clarify that I'm no saint, nor am I selfless. I know what happened wasn't entirely on me. However, in order to focus solely on my recovery, I can't be stressed out about this whole situation and have all this tension around. Seeing Jake being put in that position and Lisa, as hurtful as she was, being upset and holding hatred can affect herself and the baby. I did what I could to fix things so that everyone can focus on being healthy and positive without holding any grudges. I know I sure will. I know Lisa. She can be very stubborn and unreasonable, and if I left things in her hands, I'm 99% sure it would have resulted in much, much worse circumstances than me putting the first hand forward. At least now I can focus on my recovery without any distress or toxicity. I'm human. I felt angry. I felt upset. Yeah, I wanted to give her a piece of my mind, but doing so isn't helping myself, her, Jake, or my family, only damaging things further. This realization is what prompted me to let it all go and focus on positivity and my mental and physical health. Jake and Lisa headed home that night, and I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I knew things wouldn't magically get better, but it felt like we were on the right track. My parents, still staying with me, were a huge help. Mom cooked meals, and Dad drove me to my appointments. They were both still wary of Lisa, though, and I couldn't blame them. She had really shown her true colors during this whole mess. A few days later, I got a text from Lisa. She wanted to meet up and talk things out again. I was skeptical, but I agreed. We met at a local coffee shop, and from the moment I sat down, I could tell this wasn't going to be pleasant. She started off by saying, "I still think you should have waited to tell everyone your news. It was really selfish of you to do it on the same day as our announcement." I couldn't believe my ears. Here I was, fighting for my life, and she was still hung up on her pregnancy announcement. I took a deep breath and said, "Lisa, I needed my family. This wasn't about stealing your spotlight. It was about survival." She rolled her eyes and snapped, "You always need to be the center of attention. You couldn't let us have one happy moment." That hit a nerve. I leaned forward and said, "This isn't about attention. It's about needing support. If you can't see that, then maybe the problem isn't me." She huffed and muttered something under her breath. We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes before she finally got up and left, leaving me to sit there and wonder how things had gotten so messed up. When I got home, I found a note from Jake on my door. He had stopped by while I was out. It read, "Hey, I know things are tough. Just wanted you to know I'm here for you. Call me if you need anything." That brought a smile to my face. Despite everything, Jake was still my brother, and he had my back. It gave me a bit of hope that we could all get through this. The days turned into weeks, and I focused on my treatment. My parents continued to help out, and I leaned on my friends for additional support. I tried to keep my distance from Lisa, but it wasn't always possible. She made it clear she still harbored a grudge, and her coldness was palpable at family gatherings. I did my best to rise above it, focusing on the love and support from everyone else. One evening, Jake showed up unannounced. He looked exhausted, like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded, and we sat on the porch. He told me about the fights he and Lisa were having, how she kept bringing up the incident and how it was tearing them apart. "I don't know what to do, man. I'm trying to be there for both of you, but it's killing me." I felt for him. "Jake, you need to do what's best for you and your family. If that means setting boundaries, then so be it. But you also need to stand up for yourself." He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "I know, it's just hard." We talked for a while longer, and I hoped our conversation helped him find some clarity. As he left, I realized that while my battle was with cancer, his was with the emotional turmoil Lisa was causing. A few days later, I got a surprise. Lisa showed up at my door looking sheepish. She handed me a letter and left without saying a word. I opened it, and inside was an apology. She admitted she had been out of line and was struggling with her own fears and insecurities. She asked for a fresh start, not just for her, but for the sake of the family. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step in the right direction. I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. After all, holding on to anger wouldn't help any of us. As the weeks went by, I focused on my recovery and tried to keep things civil with Lisa. My parents slowly warmed up to her again, and Jake seemed relieved. We were far from perfect, but at least we were moving forward. Looking back, I realized that life's too short for grudges and bitterness. I needed to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. And with my family's support, I knew I could face whatever came next. A month or so later, I was starting to feel a bit better, both physically and mentally. The treatment was tough, but having my parents around made a world of difference. One evening, we were all sitting around the dinner table when Mom brought up a family picnic. She thought it would be good for everyone to get together outside of the house, to relax a bit and enjoy some fresh air. I agreed. It sounded like a perfect way to lighten the mood. We planned it for the upcoming Sunday, inviting Jake, Lisa, and a few close friends. I was a bit nervous about seeing Lisa again, but I hoped that the picnic atmosphere would keep things calm. Sunday arrived, and we set up in a nice spot by the lake. The weather was perfect, sunny, but not too hot. Jake and Lisa showed up, and I could tell from Jake's expression that he was hoping for a drama-free day. Lisa, on the other hand, strutted over like she was walking the red carpet. She immediately started fussing over where to set up their blanket, complaining about the sun and the bugs. As we all settled in, Lisa made it a point to mention loudly how exhausting pregnancy was and how nobody could understand what she was going through. I bit my tongue, trying not to let her comments get to me. It was typical Lisa, always needing to be the center of attention. We played some games, had some laughs, and for a while, things felt almost normal. But then, during lunch, Lisa decided to bring up the whole announcement fiasco again. "You know, I still think it was unfair that our happy news got overshadowed," she said, looking directly at me. I took a deep breath and replied, "Lisa, we've talked about this. I needed my family's support. It wasn't about overshadowing anything." She huffed and crossed her arms, muttering under her breath. Jake shot me an apologetic look, but stayed silent, clearly not wanting to stir the pot. To lighten the mood, I suggested we take a walk down to the water. As we strolled along the shore, Jake and I fell behind a bit, talking about his plans for the nursery and how excited he was for the baby. Lisa was ahead, still complaining about the walk being too long and the ground being too uneven. Suddenly, Lisa stopped and turned around, her face flushed with anger. "I can't believe you all dragged me out here in my condition. This is ridiculous!" she snapped. Jake tried to calm her down, but she was having none of it. "I'm going back to the car," she declared and stormed off. We watched her go, the tension hanging thick in the air. Jake sighed and said, "I'm sorry, man. I don't know what's gotten into her lately." I put a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, Jake. I know it's been tough. Let's just try to enjoy the day, all right?" He nodded, but I could see the strain in his eyes. We spent the rest of the afternoon trying to make the best of it. The picnic, while not perfect, was still a step towards normalcy. As the sun began to set, we packed up and headed home. Mom and Dad were quiet on the ride back, probably sensing the underlying tension. I couldn't help but feel a bit drained, both from the outing and from dealing with Lisa's outburst. That night I lay in bed thinking about everything. Despite the rocky day, I felt a bit more hopeful. Maybe Lisa's outburst was just another hurdle to overcome. I had bigger battles to fight after all, and I couldn't let her negativity drag me down. The next day I got a text from Jake. He thanked me for the picnic and apologized again for Lisa's behavior. I told him not to worry about it. Family meant sticking together through the good and the bad. He seemed relieved, and it felt good to reassure him. I decided to focus on my treatment and let the rest sort itself out. I had come this far, and I wasn't about to give up. With my family and friends by my side, I knew I could handle whatever came my way. Lisa might be a thorn in my side, but she wasn't going to take away my determination or my hope. I had too much to fight for, my health, my family, and my future, and fight I would, one step at a time. A few days after the picnic, I got a call from Jake. He sounded worn out more than usual. "Hey, can we talk?" he asked. "Sure thing, Jake. What's up?" I replied, sensing something heavy was coming. "It's Lisa. She's been difficult more than ever. She keeps saying nobody cares about her and that everyone is against her. She even threatened to leave if I didn't take her side more." I sighed, feeling the weight of his words. "Jake, you need to do what's right for you and the baby. Lisa's got to understand that you're in a tough spot, too." He groaned. "I know, man. It's just hard to balance everything. I want to be there for her, but I can't ignore what you're going through." "Look," I said, "maybe it's time you both talk to someone, a professional. This stress isn't good for either of you, especially with the baby on the way." Jake agreed, and we left it at that. I hoped he'd take my advice and find some help. The last thing any of us needed was more drama. The next week, I focused on my treatment, trying to keep a positive mindset. My parents were still a huge help, always there to lift my spirits. One afternoon, as I was resting on the couch, Mom brought me some tea and sat down next to me. "How are you feeling today, honey?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "Better, Mom. just taking it one day at a time," I replied, sipping the tea. She hesitated, then said, "You know, I talked to Jake the other day. He mentioned how tough things have been with Lisa. I'm worried about him." "I am too, Mom, but he's got to figure things out with her. We can't fix it for him," I said. She nodded. "I know, but it's hard to see him so stressed. And Lisa? Well, she's not making it any easier." "Tell me about it," I muttered, shaking my head. Just then, the doorbell rang. Mom got up to answer it, and I heard Lisa's voice in the hallway. My stomach tightened. What did she want now? Lisa walked into the living room, her expression a mix of frustration and determination. "We need to talk," she said, not even bothering with a greeting. I braced myself. "All right, Lisa, what's on your mind?" She sat down, crossing her arms. "Jake and I had another fight. He told me about your suggestion to see a therapist. I don't need therapy. I need people to stop treating me like I'm the bad guy." I raised an eyebrow. "Lisa, nobody's treating you like the bad guy. We're all just trying to get through this together." She scoffed. "Yeah, right. Ever since you dropped your bombshell, everything's been about you. Jake barely pays attention to me anymore." "Lisa, I'm fighting cancer. It's not a competition for attention," I said, trying to keep my cool. She rolled her eyes. "It's always something with you. If it's not this, it'll be something else." I felt my patience wearing thin. "Look, Lisa, I'm sorry you feel that way, but this isn't about you. It's about all of us trying to support each other." She stood up abruptly. "I knew this was a waste of time. I should have known you wouldn't understand." As she stormed out, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and sadness. Why did she have to make everything so difficult? I knew she was struggling too, but her constant need for validation was wearing everyone down. That evening, Jake called me again. "Lisa came back home upset. She said you two had a fight." "We didn't have a fight, Jake. She came over, started accusing me of stealing all the attention, and then left in a huff," I explained. He sighed deeply. "I'm sorry, man. I don't know what to do anymore." "Jake, you need to set some boundaries. Lisa's behavior isn't fair to you or anyone else. You both need to talk to someone who can help you sort this out," I insisted. "I know you're right. I'll talk to her again," he said, sounding defeated. As I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were going to get worse before they got better. But I had to keep focusing on my recovery and let Jake handle his issues with Lisa. I had my own battles to fight, and I couldn't let her negativity drag me down any further. The days continued, each one a challenge but also a step closer to healing. My parents remained my rock, and Jake tried to juggle his responsibilities. Despite the ongoing tension with Lisa, I found moments of peace in the support of my family and friends. One day at a time, I reminded myself. One day at a time. A couple of weeks went by, and I tried to keep my head down, focusing on getting better. Jake was still struggling with Lisa, but he was trying his best to juggle everything. One morning, I woke up to a text from an old friend, Bill. He'd heard about my situation from our mutual friend, and he wanted to come visit. It had been ages since I'd seen Bill, and the thought of catching up lifted my spirits a bit. Bill showed up that afternoon, a six-pack of beer in hand and a big smile on his face. "Hey, buddy, heard you could use some company," he said, giving me a hug. "Good to see you, Bill. It's been too long," I replied, feeling a wave of nostalgia. We sat on the porch, talking about old times, laughing, and just enjoying each other's company. For a while, I forgot about all the drama and stress. Bill always had a way of making everything seem lighter. As the sun began to set, Bill got a serious look on his face. "So, how are you holding up, really?" I took a deep breath and said, "It's been tough, man. The treatment is rough, and the situation with Jake and Lisa isn't helping." Bill nodded. "I heard about that. Lisa's always been a piece of work, huh?" I laughed. "You have no idea. She's been making everything 10 times harder." "Well, just remember, you've got people who care about you. Don't let her get under your skin," Bill said, patting me on the back. After Bill left, I felt a bit more hopeful. It was nice to know that despite everything, I had friends who had my back. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the future. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but with the support of my loved ones, I felt a bit more confident about facing whatever came next. The next day, Jake called me, sounding more stressed than usual. "Hey, I need a favor," he said. "Sure, what is it?" I asked. "Can you come over? Lisa's been acting up again, and I need someone to talk to her. She listens to you sometimes," he said, almost pleading. I sighed. "All right, Jake. I'll be there soon." When I arrived at Jake's place, Lisa was sitting on the couch, arms crossed and a scowl on her face. "Great, here comes the hero," she muttered as I walked in. Ignoring her snide comment, I sat down across from her. "Lisa, we need to talk." She rolled her eyes. "About what? How everything is my fault?" "Look, Lisa, I know you're going through a lot, but so is everyone else. We all need to support each other, not tear each other apart," I said, trying to stay calm. She glared at me. "You think I don't know that? It's just hard when it feels like nobody cares about what I'm going through." "That's not true, Lisa. We all care. But you've got to stop making everything a competition." "We're all in this together," I replied, hoping to get through to her. She sat there silently for a moment, then finally said, "Maybe you're right. It's just hard to see past my own problems sometimes." "I get that. But we can help each other if we try," I said, feeling a glimmer of hope. Jake walked in, looking relieved. "Thanks, man. I appreciate it." I nodded. "No problem. Just remember, we're all here for each other." As I left their place, I felt a bit better about the situation. Maybe things could get better if we all put in the effort. That evening, I got a call from my doctor with some good news. The treatment was working, and my prognosis was looking better. It was the best news I'd had in a long time, and I couldn't wait to share it with my family. I called my parents and told them the good news. They were overjoyed, and we all felt a sense of relief. I also called Jake, and he sounded genuinely happy for me. Even Lisa seemed pleased, which was a surprise. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt more hopeful than I had in months, and I started to see a light at the end of the tunnel. My family and friends rallied around me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were all on the same page. One evening, Jake and Lisa came over for dinner. The atmosphere was much lighter than usual, and we all enjoyed a pleasant meal together. Lisa even apologized for her behavior, and while I knew it wouldn't be an overnight change, it was a start. After they left, I sat on the porch with my parents, enjoying the cool evening air. "I'm proud of you, son," Dad said, his voice filled with emotion. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you guys," I replied, feeling grateful for their unwavering support. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead was still uncertain, but with my family and friends by my side, I knew I could face whatever challenges came my way. A few days after the dinner with Jake and Lisa, I was feeling a bit more optimistic. My treatment was progressing well, and I had my family and friends by my side. One morning I woke up to a knock on the door. It was Lisa, looking more frazzled than usual. "Can we talk?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. "Sure, Lisa, come on in," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. She sat down on the couch, fidgeting with her hands. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I know I've been difficult, and I'm sorry. It's just, I feel so alone sometimes." I sighed, feeling a mix of sympathy and frustration. "Lisa, you're not alone. We're all here for you, but you need to let us in and stop pushing us away." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know. It's just hard to see that sometimes. I keep thinking about everything I've lost and how scared I am about the future." "I get that. We're all scared, Lisa. But we need to support each other. Fighting and blaming won't help any of us," I said, hoping to reach her. She wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. "You're right. I want to try to be better. For Jake, for the baby, and for myself. That's all we can ask for, Lisa. Just take it one day at a time," I replied, feeling a bit hopeful. The conversation seemed to lift a weight off her shoulders, and as she left, I felt like we might finally be turning a corner. That afternoon, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. As I strolled through the park, I ran into an old friend, Mike. He was out with his dog, and we stopped to chat for a bit. "Hey, heard you were going through a tough time. How are you holding up?" Mike asked, his concern genuine. "I'm hanging in there. It's been rough, but I'm getting through it," I replied. We talked for a while, reminiscing about old times and sharing stories. It felt good to catch up and have a normal conversation for a change. When I got home, Mom was waiting for me with a worried look on her face. "Lisa called. She wants to come over for dinner again tonight." "All right, Mom. Let's do it," I said, hoping this dinner would go better than the last. That evening, Jake and Lisa arrived, and we all sat down for a meal. The atmosphere was tense at first, but gradually it started to feel more relaxed. Lisa was making an effort to be more pleasant, and Jake looked relieved. During dessert, Lisa brought up the idea of a family trip. "I was thinking maybe we could all go somewhere together, just to get away from everything and relax." I was surprised, but it sounded like a good idea. "That could be nice. Where were you thinking?" "There's this cabin up in the mountains. It's quiet, peaceful, and I think it would be good for all of us," she said. Mom and Dad seemed to like the idea, and Jake looked hopeful. "Let's do it," I said, feeling a bit excited about the prospect. We spent the next few days planning the trip. It felt good to have something positive to focus on. The day finally arrived, and we packed up the car and headed to the cabin. The drive was beautiful, and as we climbed higher into the mountains, I felt a sense of peace. The cabin was perfect. It was nestled in the woods, with a clear view of the mountains and a small lake nearby. We spent the first day settling in, enjoying the fresh air and the quiet. That evening, we sat around a campfire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. For the first time in a long while, it felt like we were all truly together. Lisa even laughed and seemed genuinely happy. As the fire crackled, Jake turned to me and said, "Thanks for suggesting this, Lisa. I think we all needed it." She smiled. "I'm glad we came. It's been nice to just relax and be with family." We all agreed, and the rest of the trip was filled with hikes, fishing, and just enjoying each other's company. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step in the right direction. On the last night, as we sat by the lake, I felt a sense of contentment. We still had a long way to go, but for the first time I felt like we were moving forward. I looked at my family, grateful for their support and love. Life was far from easy, but with them by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next. The road ahead was still uncertain, but together we could navigate it, one step at a time. The last night at the cabin was magical. We all sat around the fire, the stars twinkling above us, and for the first time in a long while I felt truly at peace. But I knew this calm wouldn't last forever. We still had to face reality when we got back. The drive home was quiet, each of us lost in our thoughts. As we pulled into the driveway, Lisa turned to me and said, "Thank you for coming on this trip. It was good for all of us." I nodded. "It was a good idea, Lisa. I'm glad we did it." As the days passed, life returned to its usual rhythm. My treatment continued, and I focused on staying positive. Jake and Lisa started going to therapy, which seemed to help them. Lisa was still her usual self, but there were moments when she showed a softer side. One evening, Jake called me over to their house. When I arrived, Lisa was in the kitchen cooking dinner. She looked up and gave me a small smile. I wanted to apologize for everything. I know I've been a pain. I was taken aback. "Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate it." Jake joined us, looking relieved. "It's been tough, but we're working through it. Thanks for always being there, man." We sat down to dinner, and it felt like a fresh start. As the night went on, I realized how far we had all come. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. A few weeks later, I got a call from my doctor with the best news I could have hoped for. My latest tests showed significant improvement. The treatment was working, and my prognosis was looking much better. I couldn't wait to share the news with my family. We decided to have a small celebration. My parents, Jake and Lisa, all came over, and we spent the evening laughing and enjoying each other's company. For the first time, Lisa seemed genuinely happy for me. It felt like a weight had been lifted off all our shoulders. As the night came to an end, Lisa pulled me aside. "I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I want you to know that I do care. I'm really happy for you." I smiled. "Thanks, Lisa. That means a lot." Life slowly started to get back to normal. My health continued to improve, and with my family by my side, I felt stronger than ever. Jake and Lisa's relationship seemed to be on the mend, and I was hopeful for their future. One day, as I was sitting on the porch, Jake came over with some exciting news. "We're having a girl," he announced, beaming with pride. "That's amazing, Jake. I'm so happy for you guys," I said, genuinely thrilled for them. As the months passed, we all continued to support each other. Lisa still had her moments, but overall things were better. We had all learned a lot about forgiveness, patience, and the importance of family. The day Lisa gave birth was one of the happiest days for all of us. Holding my niece for the first time, I felt a sense of joy and hope for the future. It was a reminder of how far we had come and how much we had to look forward to. In the end, we had all been through a lot, but we had come out stronger. Life is unpredictable, filled with ups and downs, but with family by your side, you can face anything. As I sat with my family watching Jake and Lisa with their newborn daughter, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. We had navigated through the storm, and now we were finally seeing the sunshine. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, but for now, I was content. I had my health, my family, and a new perspective on life. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Looking back, I realized that sometimes the toughest battles bring us closer together. And with that thought, I knew I could face whatever the future held, one step at a time, with my family by my side.